The coffee cup on the table was still warm when Elena Brooks, a 26-year-old interior architect, left her office in downtown Portland, Oregon, a city of rain and sleepless yellow-lit nights. That December, rain fell for 3 straight days, casting a thick fog over the Willamette River. At 10:47 p.m. the building security guard saw her step out with a black umbrella, climbing into her familiar silver Honda Civic. She said she was heading home via the steel bridge, the route she took every evening after work. A delivery driver later reported seeing her car's headlights flash through the rain before disappearing into the cold mist. What happened in the next 50 minutes would haunt Portland for 14 years. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest cases. Portland, Oregon, December 2009. The city was drenched in cold rain for 3 consecutive days, its quiet streets shimmering with blurred yellow lights on wet pavement. Elena Brooks, 26, an interior architect, left her office as the clock neared 10 p.m. Wearing a raincoat, holding a still warm coffee cup, and stepping into her silver Honda Civic, she drove slowly through the Pearl District, where glass windows reflected wet neon signs, the steady swipe of windshield wipers scraping against the mist-covered glass. On a traffic camera, her car appeared briefly in a downpour, then turned toward the steel bridge, the last image captured. The next morning, colleagues waited, but she never showed up at work. Her phone didn't ring, her inbox went unanswered. At her small apartment on NW 12th Street, the bed was neatly made, the bedroom light left on all night, and her purse sat orderly on the table. Her mother called friends, then neighbors, then hospitals, all shook their heads. Time passed, the rain kept falling, and the streets grew unfamiliar, as if they had swallowed every trace. As night fell again, her trembling mother dialed the Portland police, her voice breaking amid the howling wind outside her window. And in the rainy night, the red and blue lights of patrol cars flashed on the wet pavement, signaling the start of a disappearance that no one expected would haunt the city for years to come. The station received the call at 9:47 p.m. The woman's voice on the line trembled, barely audible over the rain pelting the tin roof. "My daughter, she didn't come home last night. Please help me." Portland police immediately dispatched a patrol car to the NW 12th apartment complex, where the missing person was reported. The rain hadn't let up, water spilling over gutters, the red and blue lights of the patrol car glinting on the soaked streets. 2 young officers entered the small apartment where Mrs. Brooks waited. They listened as she explained her daughter left the office around 10 p.m., typically a 15-minute drive home. No news this morning. Her phone was off, her car gone. They asked the usual questions. Any family disputes, signs of depression, recent boyfriends? She shook her head. Elena, she said, was private, organized, and had no reason to vanish like this. One officer took notes. The other walked through the apartment, noting the purse, coat, company ID, all untouched. By midnight, the initial report was sent to headquarters. The duty major decided to escalate the case to the investigative division. Detective Paul Whitman, with 15 years of experience in complex missing persons cases, was assigned to lead. When he got the call, he was in a coffee shop near the station, eyes red from fatigue. "Raining like this?" he asked, voice hoarse. "Yes, sir, all night." He tossed money on the counter, pulled on his trench coat, and stepped into the street. His car sped through the rain, the wipers scraping the windshield like a cold clock ticking down. The next morning, Whitman stood under an awning near the steel bridge, where a patrol team had found a car matching Elena Brooks' registration. The silver Honda Civic was parked neatly on the side, about 20 meters from the bridge's edge. No signs of a crash or forced entry. He opened his small notebook, scanning the scene. Rain still fell heavily, blurring the line between the river and the road. A young officer approached, doors locked from the outside. Mud on the passenger side window. She probably parked here. They pried the door open with specialized tools, working in silence. Inside, a purse, leather wallet, phone, driver's license, all neatly arranged, as if the owner had just stepped away briefly. No signs of a struggle, no blood. On the windshield, a small blue fiber was caught in the rain-dusted glass. Whitman leaned in, examining closely. He gloved up, used tweezers to place the fiber in an evidence bag. "Handle it carefully," he told the technician. "If she left on her own, she planned it well, and I don't buy that." He turned to the car, his gaze cold and tired. Someone was in this car after she disappeared. Another officer called out, "Found a fresh shoe print near the railing." Whitman walked over. On the wet concrete, a clear print stood out, large, about size 11, deep and heavy-treaded, pressed into the mud, as if someone had stood there for a while. The print faced the water's edge, with no return tracks. No turn-back marks, the forensic tech noted. They might have walked to the river and vanished, or tossed something in. Whitman crouched, eyes fixed on the tread's grooves. "Work boots or hiking shoes," he said softly. "Sold at places like Home Depot." He ordered measurements, macro photos, and a silicone mold made on the spot. No skid marks, no signs of a struggle. The ground was undisturbed. Everything was too clean, too still, as if someone had calculated every step. On the bridge's steel railing, a patch of paint was chipped, smeared with a dark stain, possibly mud or engine oil. Whitman requested a sample. Under the river, the dive team completed their first sweep. One diver surfaced, removing his mask, shouting over the engine. "Nothing but trash and some metal scraps. Current's strong, can't see past 2 meters." Forensics set up a small tent to process the scene. A team member opened a laptop, uploading drone footage from the bridge area the previous night. The images were blurry from the rain, but a dark figure stood near the railing in one corner of the frame. Unclear if male or female, just a tall shape in a dark coat. Captured at 10:58 p.m., 5 minutes after the traffic camera recorded Elena turning onto the bridge, then the figure vanished from the frame. Whitman stared at the screen. "Zoom in. Enhance the light," he ordered. But the image pixelated, leaving only a blurry shape reflecting in the sodium streetlights. "We need the high-res original from the Department of Transportation," he said. A plastic box was placed on a field table. Inside was the blue fiber from the car's windshield. Under UV light, forensics identified it as synthetic, likely nylon, used in tie-downs or work gloves. Whitman nodded slowly. "Could belong to a kidnapper. Find out where this fiber's made." The technician replied, "Yes, sir. I'll send it to material analysis." By noon, the scene was nearly clear. Another officer approached with a new evidence bag. Found a faint fingerprint on the exterior door handle. Doesn't match the victim's. Whitman turned immediately. "Run it against the database. If it's not in the system, send it to AF." He looked at the silent car, voice lowering. This person was calm enough to lock the door, leave no clear traces, and take nothing. That means they had a specific goal. Across the river, a train's horn droned slowly, cutting through the heavy air. Whitman gazed at the swirling water, then asked, "What do you think? Could she have fallen into the river?" A dive team member replied, "The current's strong, but from this railing, someone would have had to push her. She wasn't tall enough to climb over." He fell silent. In his mind, a map of disappearances along the Willamette over the past 10 years surfaced. A few cases shared similarities. Female, 20s to 30s, vanished at night near downtown. But none had clear evidence of foul play. At the end of the day, as the team packed up, Whitman lingered. He walked along the railing, staring at the ripples, swallowing the fading daylight. In the cold air, the smell of wet steel and oil mingled, evoking the bridge's metallic tang. "A person doesn't vanish just with rain," he said softly, almost to himself. "Someone helped her disappear." In the preliminary report sent to headquarters, Whitman wrote concisely, "Preliminary assessment, no blood, no struggle marks. Vehicle intact. One unknown male shoe print, size 11, leading toward river edge. Possible abduction." As he signed it, the clock neared 6 p.m. Streetlights along the river began to glow, reflecting on the inky water. A new rain shower approached from the west, and Whitman, who had stood in the cold wind for nearly 10 hours, still hadn't left the bridge. In the pale yellow light, His shadow stretched across the wet pavement, a small mark in the silence of a city slipping into night, where a woman had vanished without a trace. The next morning, Portland was raining again. The relentless northwest rain cloaking the Willamette River in a cold silver mist. Police set up 2 more field tents along the muddy riverbank below the steel bridge, where the soaked ground steamed like smoke. Detective Paul Whitman stood among the high-vis jackets, his voice low and hoarse as he ordered, "Expand the search radius 2 miles downstream. Call in the dive team, K-9 units, and request helicopter support from air support." He looked up at the leaden sky, where a Bell 407 had just taken off, its rotors slicing the rain into shimmering spirals. The first dive team entered the water at 9 a.m. The river was murky, freezing, its strong current forcing them to anchor with ropes tied to shore posts. Visibilities less than half a meter. One diver reported over the radio. Mud, branches, metal debris were sweeping by hand. On the bank, other teams with K-9 units began moving along the river trail. Each dog sniffed Elena's coat, taken from her apartment the previous night. They whined softly, then led their handlers toward the bridge. One stopped near the shore, barking loudly, then turned toward a patch of reeds, where a soaked black leather glove was found. Forensics immediately photographed it, gloved up, and picked it up. A tear on the glove's wrist revealed half a word. Work. Ma. Construction grade. Workman Tools brand. A technician said. Whitman glanced at it. Send it to evidence. Check for fingerprints or DNA. He stepped toward the water's edge, where small eddies swirled. If this glove belongs to a kidnapper, he might have dragged her out here. He scanned the area. No skid marks, no signs of a struggle, no blood. Just silence. In the air, the helicopter moved slowly along the river, its thermal camera scanning the water and grassy banks. Images streamed to a monitor in the command van. All static, dense black reeds, faint heat signatures from small animals. Nothing human. No body, the pilot reported. Nothing notable, except a jacket floating near the southern jetty. A team rushed to the spot. What they retrieved was a gray paracord, nearly 2 meters long, one end cleanly cut, the other singed. Whitman held it, the cord heavy with mud. Climbing rope, professional grade. Not something an average person uses. He examined it closely, then sealed it in an evidence bag. Could have been used to tie her or drag something to a vehicle. By noon, the search expanded to a temporary parking lot near the bridge. An officer found a small rain-soaked paper stuck to the ground, a torn parking ticket, faintly printed with Riverfront Lot, September 9, 12:22:37 p.m. The same time frame as Elena's disappearance. Whitman used tweezers to lift it, eyeing the serial number, cross-checked the parking system. I want to know who paid for this ticket. Everything was sealed in plastic bags, placed on a field table among a growing line of evidence. The glove, the cord, the ticket, 3 disjointed pieces that could be the key to unlocking the case. As dusk fell, the search team found nothing more. Thick mud, rising water, and heavy rain made the effort futile. The entire Willamette stretch was cordoned off, motorboats sweeping their floodlights across the water. Locals gathered on the bridge, watching, whispering. Middle-aged woman, Elena's mother, was brought to the scene, her face pale. Whitman signaled his team to stay back, then approached her, speaking softly. "You should go rest. We're doing everything we can." She looked at him, voice breaking. She couldn't have fallen into the river. Elena could swim. She was afraid of deep water. He nodded faintly, offering no reply, only gazing at the churning river. At night, floodlights swept the water, casting cold beams. Officers rotated shifts, planting more glow stakes to mark searched areas. A forensic specialist approached Whitman, whispering, "No witnesses. We checked every camera in the area, the bridge, gas stations, nearby coffee shops. No one saw her leave the car." Whitman narrowed his eyes, asking, "Anyone else around?" "Just that one figure in the bridge footage last night. Otherwise, no one." Near midnight, with the river wind biting, Whitman walked along the water's edge, his boots sinking into mud. He paused by a lamppost, where the glove was found, eyes fixed on the black water. In his mind, the scene mapped itself, the car's position, wind direction, current, camera timestamp, all too neatly aligned. "This isn't an accident," he muttered. "It's staged." A young officer nearby overheard, hesitating before asking, "You think this is a kidnapping?" Whitman didn't turn. "If it is," he said slowly, "they knew she'd pass through here, meaning they were watching her." 3 days later, Portland remained damp, wrapped in an endless blanket of rain. The Willamette's banks receded, leaving long mud streaks and debris drifting south, while the search for Elena Brooks hit a dead end. In the Special Investigations Office, fluorescent lights glared down on a metal table lined with evidence bags, the glove, the cord, the parking ticket. Detective Paul Whitman sat silently, flipping through reports. All bore the same cold conclusion: no trace, no witness, no new lead. An electronics forensics tech entered, carrying a hard drive and a stack of printouts. "We recovered location data from the victim's phone, but..." He paused. The signal dropped when the car stopped, around 10:56 p.m. Then the phone shut off completely. No pings, no network activity, no GPS. Whitman asked, voice rough. "So she didn't leave the car?" "Not certain." From that point, the phone stayed put. When forensics found it, the battery was nearly dead. He frowned, leaning back. "Someone turned it off. That's not random." Another report arrived from the bank. Elena hadn't withdrawn money, used cards, booked rooms, bought tickets, or logged into social media since that night. Her account was untouched, save for unread work emails. Her mother said Elena planned to eat a late dinner at home, with no other plans. If she left on her own, Whitman told his assistant, she'd have left a trace. Someone like Elena doesn't vanish this cleanly. In the meeting room, a city map sprawled across the table, red dots marking searched areas. Each dot was a day without results. No witnesses, no camera footage after the bridge. The rain washed everything away, an officer reported. "We asked residents around the Pearl District. No one heard screams or unusual engines." Whitman stared at the map for a long time, then said quietly, "We're chasing a void." That evening, he returned to the bridge alone. Rain pattered down, distant lights reflecting on the gray water. He opened his notebook, the last page bearing yesterday's note, possible abduction. Now that line seemed to mock him. In the darkness, everything was unnervingly still. The sound of the streetcar, the wind, and far off, water dripping from the bridge into the river. If someone was here that night, he thought, they knew exactly where the cameras weren't, how to erase traces before the rain hit. On the 5th day, the police held a brief press conference. The spokesperson's voice was somber. "No clear evidence of foul play, but we're treating this as a suspicious disappearance. We urge the community to provide information." Media plastered Elena's image across evening news. Long brown hair, a faint smile, cold gray eyes. Hotlines received dozens of calls, none leading anywhere. One claimed she was seen at a Greyhound station. It was just a look-alike. Another swore they heard a scream near the bridge. It turned out to be a train's horn echoing across the river. By the second week, all leads stalled. Lab results confirmed the blue fiber on the car's windshield didn't match common industrial materials, a custom synthetic, untraceable. The size 11 shoe print, no match in AFIS. The fingerprint on the door handle, too faint to identify. Everything suggested the perpetrator was cloaked in Portland's rainy shadow, a shadow that left no shape. One late evening, Whitman sat alone in his office. Streetlights outside reflected through the window, casting mottled light on the walls. On his desk, crime scene photos overlapped. The steel bridge in the rain, the empty riverbank, the solitary car. He picked up a pen, writing one final line in the report. No further leads. The trail goes cold. Then he stopped, staring out the window, where the rain tapped steadily on the tin roof, whispering like the city's breath. In his personal journal, on the 17th day since the disappearance, he wrote, "Nothing left but the sound of rain. It falls on the river, the bridge, the roads we've torn apart, and found nothing. Maybe the only thing left of her is this silence." Outside, Portland lit up, red and green lights glinting on wet pavement. Somewhere, the Willamette flowed, carrying the secrets of that rainy night. And in the small room where Detective Whitman sat, Elena Brooks' case was officially filed in the coldest category of the police department, cold case. In 2010, in the basement archives of the Portland Police Department, the file labeled 2009 MPBR case was shelved among the cold cases, missing, unresolved. A dossier over 2 inches thick, its hardcover faded from being flipped through for nearly a year, now sat silently among hundreds of other missing persons cases, stacked like dreams without endings. Detective Paul Whitman stood before the shelf on his last afternoon in the force. He removed his badge, placed it on the metal table, and looked at the gray file labeled, Brooks, Elena, Portland, 2009. Under a thin layer of dust, a smudged pencil note remained, possible abduction, no body. In the corner of the room, the air conditioner hummed, the smell of old paper and dry ink mingling with the damp scent of cold concrete. He said nothing, only lightly touched the spine of the file, as if touching something still alive, a question never answered. That March, the investigation officially stalled. No new evidence, no fresh statements, no one charged. The forensics lab concluded, insufficient basis to confirm a crime. Voluntary departure remains a possibility. Words Whitman despised. He knew Elena didn't leave. She had a stable job, unfinished design contracts, an untouched bank account. No one walks away from their life that cleanly, but the truth was, there was nothing to hold on to. In the months that followed, the press stopped mentioning her name. News sites moved on to new disappearances: a student in Seattle, a hiker on Mount Hood, a mother in Eugene. Elena was gradually buried in the cold churn of modern American news, where old fears survive only one weather cycle. The missing posters lingered at a few streetcar stops, rain and sun fading the ink to pale gray, leaving only her blurred eyes staring into the void. Whitman left the department in June. He had served 30 years, handling 27 homicides, 7 missing persons cases, and hundreds of investigations. But Elena's case was the one that clung to him most. At his simple retirement ceremony, colleagues shook his hand, offering faint smiles. "You need a break, Paul. Not every case has an ending," he only replied, "I know," then looked out the window, where rain began falling again on the Willamette River. From then on, Elena Brooks' file rested in the archives, among thousands of unsolved cases, a parallel world where every question hung suspended. In 2011, the state's new data system was implemented, digitizing all old files. Her name appeared in the missing persons database, a cold entry, Brooks, Elena M. Age at disappearance, 26, last seen December 9, 2009, Portland, Oregon. Status, missing. Unresolved. In an internal report, a note was transcribed verbatim from Whitman's notebook. No further leads. The trail went silent. The data entry clerk didn't know that line wasn't just professional documentation, but the personal regret of a man who believed he'd missed something. Time passed. Whitman's old office was reassigned to a younger investigative team. They barely recalled Elena's case beyond a few dry summary lines. In Portland, the steel bridge still glowed each night, cars passing the spot where she vanished. Sometimes, Riverside residents said they saw flowers placed under the railing, white daisies drifting silently with the current. No one knew who left them, perhaps her mother. Whitman moved to the Salem suburbs. He grew vegetables, read the morning paper, tried to forget the sound of Portland's rain. But on windy nights, he lay awake, haunted by the train's horn, the lights reflecting on the river, and the image of the abandoned silver car. A person can't just vanish, he once told himself. If there's no body, they're still out there somewhere. In 2015, a rookie employee stumbled across Elena's file in the archives, noticing Whitman's name as lead investigator. He emailed, "Would you share insights on this case for our cold case training?" Whitman replied curtly, "No. Some cases are better left alone." But that night, he opened an old hard drive, still holding crime scene photos, the glove, the paracord, the torn parking ticket. He zoomed in on the image of the bridge railing, where the shoe print faced the river and lingered. The print, in hindsight, seemed off. Not necessarily male, possibly unisex, like women's work boots. He shut the computer, sat in the dark, his heart heavy. In December 2019, on the 10th anniversary of Elena's disappearance, a local paper revisited the case in a Portland's Coldest Cases feature. Her photo appeared on the front page. In a small corner of the frame, Whitman stood behind the bridge railing, holding the file, a 2009 snapshot. Beneath the stark headline was his old quote, "Nothing left but the sound of rain." And indeed, after 10 years, all that remained of Elena Brooks' case was Portland's rain, falling steadily, tapping the river, as if repeating a question no one could answer. Where did she go that night? And who made her vanish from this world? 14 years passed since that rainy night. Portland had changed. Glass buildings rose along the Willamette, artisan coffee shops replaced old gas stations, yet the steel bridge stood as a silent witness. In a lit office on the 5th floor of the Portland Police Department, the Justice Renewal Program had just launched, a national project to revive cold cases using next-generation DNA technology and genealogical analysis. Hundreds of files were stacked on the table. Among unfamiliar names, one weathered gray file stopped Detective Laura Simmons, Brooks, Elena, missing, December 9, 2009. Laura, born in 1988, would be the same age as the victim if Elena were alive. She skimmed the pages, the paper creased, the blue ink faded. The lead investigator's notes, Whitman, P., appeared repeatedly, precise yet heavy. "Nothing left but the sound of rain," he wrote in the final note. Laura sat quietly, rereading that line. For her generation, DNA technology had changed everything, but the human feeling before a mystery remained, silent, persistent, haunting. A week later, she chose Elena's file as her first case for reinvestigation. The reason was simple, honest. No body, no witnesses, but there's untested evidence under new technology. It was the blue fiber from Elena's car windshield, collected in 2009 and stored in an evidence freezer for 14 years. The old report noted, synthetic fiber, unknown origin, possibly industrial nylon. Back then, DNA extraction wasn't possible. Now things were different. Laura sent a request to AAM Forensic Labs, a private lab in Texas known for forensic-grade genome sequencing, capable of isolating DNA from the tiniest samples. In her accompanying letter, she wrote, "Fiber fragment retrieved from vehicle windshield, case hash 2009 MPBRKS. Request full DNA sequencing, trace-level extraction, cross-check with CODIS and genealogical datasets." 3 days later, she received a call from AAM's director, Dr. Harris Doyle. "We've got the sample," he said, in a steady tone. "We'll need at least 6 weeks, but I'll warn you, after this long, the DNA might be heavily degraded." Laura replied, "I just need a chance. We've waited 14 years already." While awaiting results, Laura rebuilt the case from scratch. She retrieved Whitman's original file, crime scene photos, steel bridge maps, and evidence images. Everything was digitized and pieced together on a large screen, like reconstructing a shadow in the 2009 rain. The strangest part, she told her young partner, is no struggle, no skid marks, no theft. The perpetrator was calm, likely stalked her. And this blue fiber, it doesn't match anything Elena owned. That evening, Laura went home late. Portland's rain fell, fierce yet delicate, like the rhythm in Whitman's old note. She opened her laptop, searching for information on him. Whitman, now 68, lived in Salem. She wrote, "Dear Sir, I'm Detective Simmons with Justice Renewal. I'm reopening the Elena Brooks case. You led it in 2009. I'd like to meet, to discuss." 2 days later, his reply came, "Dear girl, I thought that case was gone for good. If you want to hear, I'll tell you something I never told anyone. But don't expect too much. Sometimes, technology can't explain silence." In late February 2023, Laura visited Whitman's home. He was older than in the file photo. Silver hair, slow gait, eyes still sharp. On the coffee table was the worn file he'd kept for 14 years. He said, "I thought she was pulled into the river, but no body was found." Everything stopped there. "One thing I never put in the report that night," an anonymous witness called, saying they saw a dark green pickup parked near the bridge around 11 p.m. By the time we got there, it was gone. No plate, no camera. The tip was dismissed. Laura took notes, a vague feeling stirring. The blue fiber, the green pickup, the endless rain. As she left, Whitman called after her. "If you find something, let me know. I don't need praise, I just want to know I didn't miss it." Laura nodded. Outside, Portland's rain fell like it did 14 years ago, and the wind through the bridge sounded like the sigh of a case awakened from a long sleep. The next week, AAM Labs confirmed they'd extracted viable DNA from the fiber. The final line of their report made Laura sit up. "DNA partial profile retrieved, potential male contributor, quality sufficient for genealogical comparison." For the first time in 14 years, Elena Brooks' disappearance had a pulse, small, fragile, but enough to stir a city that had forgotten her. 2 months later, on a mid-April 2023 morning, Detective Laura Simmons' computer lit up with an email titled simply, "AAM Forensic Labs, DNA report ready." She sat still, took a deep breath, and clicked. The report appeared on a white background, AAM's logo in the top left, the first line slowing her pulse. Result: partial male DNA profile successfully sequenced. Not found in CODIS, probable familial match detected, surname cluster, Heller. Laura read each word carefully, then looked up at the Portland map on the wall. Heller, a common surname, but AAM's report noted, genetic line strongly localized in Multnomah County, Oregon. Someone in that family was, or had been in Portland. After 14 years, the first trace breathed life into Elena Brooks' case. She called Dr. Harris Doyle in Texas immediately. "Are you sure?" she asked. He replied evenly, "We cross-referenced with over 1.8 million public genealogical records. Your sample has a 0.27% DNA match with a Heller lineage, rooted in Multnomah County. The strongest match is a woman, Bethany Heller, born 1989. Likely a second or third degree relative to the DNA source." Laura closed her eyes for a moment, then opened her notebook. "Send me the full extended family tree." That afternoon, she mapped the Heller family on a digital board, starting from ancestors in Ohio to a branch that moved to Oregon in the 1950s. The lineage spread wide, with over 70 people recorded in Multnomah and Clackamas counties. Laura circled each branch, noting occupations, ages, residences. She filtered for men aged 30, 60 and 2009. The initial list had 142 names. Over the next 2 weeks, Simmons and her genealogical analysis team narrowed the scope. They used employment records, addresses, vehicle registrations, and Portland's utility database, anything intersecting with the steel bridge. Finally, 3 men matched the genetic profile closest to the fiber's DNA. One lived in Bend, one in Vancouver, and the third, Norman Frederick Heller, electrician, 49, residing in Northeast Portland. Laura paused at his name. Norman had worked for Cascade Electric, a company contracted to maintain lighting along the Willamette River front and Steel Bridge from 2008-2010. City records listed him as working night shifts several times in December 2009, the time Elena Brooks vanished. She dug into public data. Heller, married once, divorced in 2012, no children, no criminal record. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, often fixing cars in his garage late at night. Nothing suspicious on paper. But Laura pulled up a 2019 Google Street View of his house. In the yard sat a dark green pickup, 2007 model, matching the anonymous tip Whitman had mentioned. When she presented her findings to team leader Lieutenant Marcus Hale, he was silent for a long moment. "Any direct evidence?" he asked. Laura replied, "Not yet, but genetically. Norman Heller is either a second-degree relative or the DNA source. He worked near the scene, on night shifts during the victim's disappearance. And we have matching colors, the green pickup. Hale nodded. All right, I'll sign for surveillance. But Simmons, be careful. This is Portland PD's first official use of genealogical tech. If we're wrong, the press will crucify us. Laura gave a tired smile. If we're right, it'll revive more than one case. 7 days after AAM's DNA match confirmation, Detective Laura Simmons' team was authorized to covertly monitor Norman Frederick Heller, the central target in Elena Brooks's disappearance. No one spoke his name loudly outside closed briefings. All documents were marked confidential, internal only. They called him Target 19. Heller lived in northeast Portland, in a small ash-gray house tucked among maple trees. Each morning at 6, he left with a tool bag and a paper coffee cup from Riverside Espresso nearby. He worked at Cascade Electric shop until late, then returned home, avoiding neighbors, with no social media or personal phone bills registered under his old company. A man invisible in a bustling city. Laura directed surveillance from a white van parked 2 houses away. Inside, screens displayed handheld camera feeds, long lenses tracking Heller's every move. Keep 200 feet, no contact, she instructed. We need DNA, not suspicion. On the 3rd day, scouts recorded Heller stopping at a bench near Irving Park. He sat, smoked for 10 minutes, then tossed the cigarette butt onto the grass. After he left, Officer Reese, gloved, carefully bagged the butt. Laura got the radio report, sample acquired, she replied curtly. Get it to the lab. Results came the next morning. Portland PD's DNA lab confirmed, DNA sequence from cigarette butt fully matches male DNA, recovered from blue fiber in Elena Brooks' case. Laura read the line 3 times, her heart tightening. 14 years, and now a tiny fiber on a car windshield had led to a man living normally, brewing coffee each morning as if nothing had happened. We've got him, she said softly. Reese glanced at her through the rearview mirror. What now, boss? Laura replied. Stay quiet, keep watching. We need a search warrant, before knocking. In that afternoon's internal briefing, she presented the evidence chain to Lieutenant Marcus Hale. On screen, Heller's routine played out, leaving home, stopping at the coffee shop, smoking, returning. No signs of panic, Hale noted. Looks like he doesn't know he's being watched. Laura nodded. Exactly. He's too confident, probably thinks it's buried forever. She showed the final slide, a genetic comparison chart, AATG, CCTA, GTT sequences, perfectly matching the fiber and cigarette butt. Hale looked, then nodded slowly. I want this summary to the district attorney by morning. Will request warrants for his house, vehicle, and Cascade Electric's old warehouse. He paused, eyeing Laura. Have you talked to Whitman? Yes. He knows, he said. If I catch Heller, let him witness it. Over the next 3 days, surveillance tracked Heller's habits and routes to pinpoint a safe time for the warrant. At 6:30 a.m. daily, he stopped at Riverside Espresso, ordering a black coffee, no sugar. Laura arranged for a plainclothes officer to sit 2 tables away, observing. One morning, when Heller left an unfinished coffee, the officer quickly bagged it. That evening, the DNA lab confirmed again, saliva on the cup's rim fully matched the 2009 fiber's DNA. No doubt remained. No probabilities. Only the stark truth. Norman Heller was the one who left the trace on Elena Brooks' car. When Laura received the final report, she stood long by the precinct window, watching rain fall past the streetlights. She felt no triumph, only weight. 14 years, she whispered. He's been living here, driving past that bridge every day. She recalled Whitman's words. If someone made her vanish, they knew how to make the city hear nothing. Now, that person would be forced to speak. The next day, Simmons submitted an 80-page warrant application to the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, including USHA-AM and Portland PD DNA reports. Genealogical tracing to the Heller family in Multnomah Cascade Electric employment records, placing him near the steel bridge in 2009. Additional evidence from the cigarette butt and coffee cup, the conclusion stated, sufficient probable cause for search warrant. Primary suspect, Norman Frederick Heller, 49. As the DA signed, Laura closed the file, a chill running down her spine. She knew the next step wasn't just a warrant, it was confronting 14 years of darkness. Portland's dawn broke in a thin, cold rain, the familiar northwest breath. The dashboard clock showed 4:37 a.m. In the command van, Detective Laura Simmons checked her gear one last time. Through the window, dozens of black-clad figures, Portland PD's SWAT team, silently took positions around a two-story wooden house in Gresham, 30 minutes from downtown. The small, gray-painted house, porch light off, showed only faint infrared camera glow from the second-floor window. There, Norman Frederick Heller slept, unaware that his 14 years of silence were about to end. Laura nodded. SWAT Commander Sergeant Miller raised his hand, signaling, "Breach, on my mark. 3, 2, 1. A sharp crack rang out as the door burst open. Flashlights pierced the dark, voices shouting in unison. "Police, search warrant. Don't move." A K-9 barked, echoing in the tight space. In the upstairs bedroom, Heller jolted awake, stumbling, barely grasping the situation, as guns pointed at him. He wore a gray t-shirt, hair disheveled, eyes wide, stunned. What's?" an officer shouted. "Stand still, hands behind your head." In under 40 seconds, the house was secured. Laura stepped inside, the smell of damp mold and electrical grease hitting her, exactly as described in Heller's old workplace files. The kitchen was cluttered, the dining table covered with papers, electrical boxes, and wiring. She gloved up, signaling forensics to start sweeping. "Basement first," she said. Down the stairs, flashlight beams swept over shelves of tools, pliers, saws, coiled wires, cans of industrial paint. In the corner stood a locked wooden cabinet, its top thick with dust. Miller pried it open with a crowbar. Inside, neatly arranged like a display case, were items sealed in clear plastic bags, leather gloves, a gray paracord, and a small object that froze. Laura, a silver necklace engraved with EB. She held the evidence bag to the light. The engraving was worn by time, but still legible. "Elena Brooks," she whispered. No one spoke, only the rain on the tin roof played a backdrop to the moment the team realized they had touched the past. Beside the items, forensics found a pair of size 11 leather boots, caked with dark, dried mud. Laura requested a sample of the soil from the soles, noting it for comparison with the 2009 steel bridge mud. On a workbench they found an old, repeatedly folded paper map, marked with red circles along the Clackamas River, south of Portland. The largest circle was near an abandoned lot, once owned by a construction materials company, an area rarely visited, just hundreds of meters from the river. Laura studied the map, then turned to Miller. "Log these coordinates. This could be where he took her." Upstairs, another team checked the dark green Ford F-150 pickup in the garage, the same vehicle described by the anonymous witness 14 years ago. Forensics scanned the truck bed with UV light. Faint glowing spots appeared under old paint, in a splatter pattern. "Trace blood detected," a technician reported. "Minimal, but positive for luminol." Laura approached, masked, and looked closer. Amid caked mud, there were drag marks from a heavy object. Nearby was a nylon tarp, stained with dark, hardened patches. "Seal everything," she said softly. "Send it to the lab. If this is human blood, we can match it to Elena's DNA profile." As everything was photographed, cataloged, and sealed, Laura climbed the stairs. In the living room, Heller sat handcuffed in a chair, staring blankly, his face eerily calm, only his hands trembling slightly. Laura stood before him. "Mr. Heller, you're under arrest for suspicion of involvement in the disappearance of Elena Brooks, December 2009. You have the right to remain silent and to an attorney." Heller looked up, voice hoarse. "What are you talking about? I don't know anyone. I didn't do anything." "We'll discuss that at the station," Laura replied, her tone cold. Police led Heller out as neighbors peeked through curtains. Patrol car lights flashed on the house walls, red and blue flickering in the rain. A local news reporter tipped off, was blocked at the street's end. Laura stepped onto the porch, rain wetting her coat. She scanned the small yard, noticing a slightly sunken patch of soil near a flower bed, with fresh grass growing in a neat circle, as if leveled months ago. "Mark this area," she told Miller. "Don't touch anything. I want a dig team here by morning." As the police car carrying Heller drove off, Laura stood a few steps away, watching it leave the neighborhood. His brief words echoed in her mind, mixing with the rain and engine hum. "Still by the river." Which river? The Willamette, where she vanished, or the Clackamas, marked on the map? She gripped the evidence bag with the EB necklace, her hand tightening. Whitman stood beside her, eyes sunken, saying softly, "He just confessed, you know. The guilty always slip before they think they're safe." Laura replied quietly. "Or he wants us to find something else." News of the arrest spread across Portland within hours. TV stations replayed footage of Heller being escorted in the rain, looping his vague statement. Headlines scrolled, "Breaking news, 2009 missing case solved, suspect in custody." Residents near the steel bridge recalled memories from 14 years ago: the rainy night, the abandoned silver car, yellow police tape, and Elena Brooks' face on faded missing posters. A story thought buried resurfaced, stunning the city. At Portland Police Headquarters, reporters crowded the hallway. The spokesperson said briefly, "The suspect is in custody for investigation. The 2009 case is now classified as a homicide investigation." That last sentence froze the air. A missing persons case had become a murder, and the only one who knew the truth sat in a cell downstairs. The Portland Police interrogation room always had a white light that made everything colder than it was. Norman Frederick Heller sat at the table's edge, hands clasped, cuffs removed, but wrists still marked red. He hunched, breathing steady but slow, like someone trying to recall a memory from a dark place he feared to face. Across from him was Detective Laura Simmons, holding a thick file. 14 years of investigation, 14 years of silence, and now the moment truth began to crack open. "Mr. Heller," Laura began, voice calm. "You know why you're here?" Heller nodded faintly, eyes on the table. "You say I killed someone," he said, voice rough. "But I didn't kill anyone. She wanted to leave. She chose to." "She?" Laura asked. "You mean Elena Brooks?" Heller closed his eyes, silent for a few seconds. "She said she wanted to get away, leave Portland. I just helped her. Everyone wants to blame me because she didn't come back." Laura placed a photo of the silver EB necklace found in his basement on the table. Light reflected off the surface, cutting the silence. "If you just helped her, why was this in your house? She wore it the night she disappeared. Her name's engraved on it." Heller stared at the photo. So long Laura thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said softly, I found it. She dropped it in my truck." "The truck you cleaned so well we needed luminol to find blood?" Laura said, voice lowering. "You didn't just find it." Heller went silent. For minutes, only the rain tapped the tin roof. Laura pulled another file. DNA test results from the fiber, cigarette butt, and coffee cup. "This is science, not opinion," she said, sliding the report toward him. "Your DNA matches the sample on Elena Brooks' car the night she vanished. No one else was in that car that night. No one but you." Heller looked at the bolded text, reading slowly as if it made no sense. "Match probability, 99.97%. His hands shook. "No way, I didn't. He looked up, eyes red. "She wanted to go. I didn't do anything. She said she needed to escape everything. I just drove her along the river. It was raining. She wanted to stop, get out, and then she slipped." Heller said, quickly, almost pleading. "She fell. I panicked. I thought she was dead. I didn't mean to." His voice broke. "I just didn't know what to do with her." Laura stared at him, unwavering. "You say she slipped, but the shoe print on the bridge doesn't match that. It leads from the river to the car, not the other way. You stood there, watching her fall, or did you push?" Heller shook his head violently, tears falling. "No, I didn't push. I tried to pull her up. She grabbed my hand, then slipped away. Then why didn't you call for help? Why hide the car, ditch the phone, lock the doors, and vanish from the scene? Heller buried his face in his hands, voice breaking. Because I knew they wouldn't believe me. Who'd believe a single electrician driving a young woman to the river at midnight? Laura stood, stepping closer. They might have believed you if you told the truth. But you didn't just leave her, you buried her. You had a map, Heller. A map with red marks around the Clackamas River. We've seen it. Heller looked up, eyes cloudy, as if a final shell in him had cracked. You don't understand, he whispered. I just wanted to bury her so the rain wouldn't wash her away. Where did you bury her? Laura asked, voice soft as the wind. A long silence. The rain grew heavier, tapping the glass. Then Heller took a deep breath, voice hoarse. By the Clackamas River, near the old abandoned construction lot. I buried her there. Laura signaled the camera to record the confession. Are you sure? Will you show us the spot? Heller nodded weakly. I can't live with it anymore. I still dream of her. She stands by the river, soaked, staring at me. He sobbed, 14 years of suppressed guilt spilling out in choked sounds. I didn't mean to. I swear I just didn't know what to do with her. Laura didn't respond. She sat, writing briefly in the report. Suspect admitted involvement in the disposal of victim's body near Clackamas River. Confession recorded. Location to be verified. As forensics entered to prepare for the scene visit, Whitman stood in the hallway, looking through the glass at the trembling man in the metal chair. I thought he was a ghost, he said softly. Laura turned. Now that ghost can talk. Heller was taken away soon after, hands still shaking, eyes empty. Laura watched, a heavy feeling in her chest. Still by the river was no longer a hint, it was a confession. And the Clackamas River, which had swallowed so many of Portland's secrets, was about to give one back. Outside, the rain continued. But in the office, that steady sound was no longer a rhythm of despair. It was the tapping of truth opening long-closed doors after 14 years. A silver-gray dawn draped the Clackamas riverbank, thin mist hovering over the water. Portland's faint light filtering through the fog like torn silver threads. Detective Laura Simmons' team arrived at 5 a.m. The air was damp, a light drizzle falling, and the forensic van's generator hummed steadily in the cold. In her hand was the old paper map from Heller's house, its red circle marking the abandoned lot by the river. This is the first spot he pointed to. Officer Reese said, stepping through muddy ground, pointing to a dense patch of grass. Reeds grew knee-high, tangled with thorns, the sharp smell of long wet riverside soil rising thickly. Laura scanned the area. The dirt road leading in was long abandoned. Tire tracks faint, nearly erased by rain. Nearby, the Clackamas River curved, its waters steel gray. The silence was absolute, broken only by insects and the mingled sounds of rain and wind. Start sweeping the area, she ordered. 2 ground-penetrating radars were deployed, scanning slowly. Blips appeared sporadically, mostly rocks or roots. Then a technician shouted, "Stop here." Solid mass about 70 centimeters down. The team set up marker stakes. Laura approached, looking at the screen, a 1.6-meter long, uniform shape. Clear. Dig here, she said softly. The first shovel strikes rang out in the silence. The soil was wet and heavy, each scoop like turning back memory. The smell of mud and decayed leaves spread, the cold earth numbing fingers. After 20 minutes, a worker called out, "Foreign material. Gray-green, like industrial tarp." Laura crouched, seeing the edge of an old dirt-stained tarp. She signaled to stop, gloved up, and with forensics gently brushed away soil. A corner of the tarp emerged, covered in hardened white lime, damp, with a sharp, salty smell. Reese whispered. He tried to dissolve the body with lime. Laura didn't reply, staring at the ground. As they removed the lime, the tarp peeled back, revealing the faint curve of a human form. Everyone fell silent. Only the camera's clicks and the scratch of pens on evidence bags sounded. When the tarp was fully removed, the body lay there, wrapped tightly in gray paracord, the same type found near the steel bridge 14 years ago. The body was decomposed, only bones and fabric scraps remaining. Laura stood motionless. She couldn't see a face, but her gaze held respect, as if greeting someone Portland had owed for 14 years. Forensic pathologist Dr. Jonathan Meyer knelt by the pit, voice even. Female, approximately 25 to 30 years old. Estimated time of death consistent with 2009. Multiple artifacts intact. He carefully extracted items, a metal key, a TriMet bus pass, and a long strand of hair caught in a button. All were sealed, labeled, photographed, and placed in stainless steel boxes. Laura picked up the bus pass, wiping it gently, reading the faint text. Valid until December 31st, 2009. It's her, she whispered, barely audible. By noon, forensics completed the excavation. The body was placed in a special plastic bag, lifted onto a stretcher, covered with a white tarp. The rain grew heavier. The team stood still, silent. They knew this moment would be recorded. June 14, 2023, the day Elena Brooks was found. Laura watched as the stretcher was loaded into the van. She touched the evidence bag with the hair. "We'll confirm," she told Dr. Meyer. "But I know, no DNA needed, it's her." At Portland's forensic lab, analysis proceeded urgently. Bones, hair, and fabric scraps were processed in a clean room. PCR machines ran overnight, comparing the remains' DNA to Elena's profile, from a toothbrush her mother provided in 2009. 2 days later, the results appeared, DNA match confirmed. 100% identity with Elena M. Brooks. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to occipital region. The second line silenced the room. Trauma to the occipital region. A heavy blow from behind. No slip, no accident. Laura held the report, hands trembling. Heller's lies in the interrogation room dissolved in one line. Murder confirmed. She texted Whitman. Found her. Confirmed. His reply was 2 words, "I know." That evening, they returned to the site for a final check. The rain had stopped. The Clackamas River lay still as a mirror, reflecting flickering work lights. Laura walked the dirt path, boots muddy, pausing at the dig site. A strange feeling rose in her chest, not victory, but deep sadness. "Sorry we made you wait so long," she said softly, as if to the river. In the distance, Whitman leaned against his car, hat low over his face. He said, voice hoarse, "I remember standing on the steel bridge, thinking she was somewhere under the water. Never thought it'd be here." Laura turned to him. "You were right, just the wrong river. She was still by the river, just not the one we thought." Whitman nodded slightly, looking at the now-filled pit, fresh mud covering the dig. Portland finally heard her voice. On the drive back, Laura opened the car window, looking out. A thin rain fell, light as ash. The city blurred in the fog. She knew tomorrow's news would flood the airwaves. Elena Brooks remains found. After 14 years, but to her, this wasn't just news. It was the end of a promise. As the car crossed the steel bridge, where it all began, Laura looked at the black water. Amid the ripples, she imagined a silver necklace glinting, engraved with EB, reflecting faint lights, then fading into the night. Official report. Date, June 14, 2023. Location, Clackamas Riverbank. Recovered remains positively identified as Elena M. Brooks. DNA match, 100%. Manner of death, homicide by blunt force trauma. Suspect in custody, Norman F. Heller. Elena Brooks' case closed like a circle, beginning in rain, ending in rain. But this time, instead of despair's cold tapping, the sound rang like a prayer, slow, sad, but finally answered with justice. The Portland Police Digital Forensics Room glowed with screen light as the team began reconstructing the crime scene with new data. Scans from the steel bridge, the shoe print, car location map, body photos, and autopsy reports were merged into a massive 3D model. On screen, Portland emerged under virtual rainy lights, recreating the night of December 9, 2009, the night Elena Brooks vanished. Detective Laura Simmons stood beside forensic technician Mark Henley, who worked the computer. He adjusted the brightness. The steel bridge appeared, Elena's silver Honda Civic, parked on the right, doors locked. The size 11 shoe print, deeper than normal, stood out like a shadow. This print is positioned toward the riverbank, Henley said. Its depth suggests a wearer weighing about 90 kilos. It matches Norman Heller's size and stride perfectly. Laura nodded, eyes fixed on the screen. And the second print? None, Henley replied. No struggle marks, no skids. That means Elena didn't run or fight hard. She may have been struck before she could react. He zoomed in on the bridge railing. Based on traffic camera light data, the team pinpointed the incident between 10:56 and 11:08 p.m., matching when Elena's phone shut off and the car was abandoned. The 3D model showed a hypothetical sequence: a man approaching from behind the car, raising a blunt object, possibly an industrial flashlight or iron bar, striking hard at the occipital region, one precise blow, felling the victim. The autopsy confirmed a skull fracture consistent with a rounded blunt tool, about 4 centimeters in diameter, compatible with Heller's electrical toolkit. Laura clenched her fists, silently watching the simulation. On screen, Elena's virtual body collapsed, her hand brushing the car door. A microscopic blood splatter hit the glass, where forensics later found the blue nylon fiber. Henley paused the image, looking at her. This is when he first left DNA. Next, they simulated the aftermath. Heller opening the back door, dragging the body inside, laying it on the floor. Soil and fiber traces on the back seat confirmed the body was there for hours. Estimated time from attack to leaving the bridge was under 2 hours, Henley said. He had enough time to drive out of downtown before the 1 a.m. patrol passed. The model shifted. Interstate I-205 led south, turning onto a small road along the Clackamas River. Mud on Heller's boots matched the sandy soil there, identical to samples from his shoes during the house search. We have the full route, Laura said softly. Steel Bridge, I-205, Clackamas Riverbank, a killer's journey, packed into 23 miles. She sat, flipping through photos of Elena's body. Each image was a slice of truth. Blunt force trauma to occipital region, no defensive wounds, presence of lime covering body. Heller didn't just hide the body, he tried to erase time. Lime to slow decomposition, to blur everything, like his words in the interrogation. Henley continued the final simulation. The green Ford truck stopping at the Clackamas Riverbank, headlights on low. A figure dug a pit, the faint light catching their face. Based on shadow patterns and weather data, he finished burying before 1:45 a.m., he said. From the strike to leaving the scene, just over 90 minutes. Laura crossed her arms, staring at the simulation. 14 years to uncover one night like this, she said softly. A night he thought would be forgotten forever. After 3 days, the team finalized the 3D forensics presentation for the DA's office. The simulation recreated the entire crime, from Elena leaving her office, parking at the bridge, to the attack, transport and burial by the Clackamas River. When the video ended, the meeting room was silent. Chief Prosecutor Miriam Decker said one sentence: "We have everything. He won't escape." The forensics team included a detailed technical report. Time of death, 10:56, 11:10 p.m., December 9, 2009. Weapon: blunt cylindrical metal object, consistent with electrical tools. Transport method: green Ford F-150, confirmed by mud and trace paint. Burial site: Clackamas Riverbank, verified by map and confession. DNA match: Heller, 100%, with 2009 scene evidence. Whitman attended the internal screening. He stood silently, watching the cold 3D images. When the video ended, he said softly, "Justice doesn't always come early. But when it does, it misses no one." After that day, Laura returned to the real scene, the steel bridge, where it all began. She stood on the railing, looking down at the Willamette River's churning waves in the late afternoon light. In her mind, the 3D model replayed that night. Elena parking her car, turning on the radio, heavy rain falling, a figure approaching from behind. Laura felt as if she were there, hearing the wind, the water, and the dull thud that ended a life. Above, gray clouds stacked in layers. A small boat drifted by, its engine mingling with the wind. Laura closed her eyes, breathing deeply. She thought of Heller sobbing in the interrogation room. His hoarse voice, "I didn't mean to, I just didn't know what to do with her." But the 3D model spoke for the truth. He knew exactly what he did. She opened her notebook, jotting final lines for the report. Reconstruction confirms deliberate act. Victim struck from behind, incapacitated instantly. Transport and burial executed within 2 hours. No indication of accident. Case classified, homicide, intentional. As she closed the notebook, early season rain began pattering on the steel railing. The Willamette flowed, silent as an ageless witness. But this time, its silence no longer concealed. It was the silence of justice, waiting to be voiced in the courtroom. The Multnomah County Courthouse was awash in camera flashes when the indictment was formally announced. Over 14 years after the fateful rainy night at the Steel Bridge, Norman Frederick Heller's name now filled a nearly 200-page indictment. Murder in the first degree, kidnapping and tampering with evidence. No longer a vague shadow in a missing unresolved file, he was now the centerpiece of one of Portland's most shocking cases in a decade. In the press room, District Attorney Miriam Decker stood amid microphones. Her voice calm but firm. "We believe we have sufficient evidence to prove Norman Heller deliberately attacked, killed, and concealed the body of Elena Brooks in December 2009, she said. "This was not an accident. This was a crime executed with cold calculation." Behind her, a board displayed crime scene photos, the 3D model faintly projected on a screen, and bold text, "Justice Renewal Case 047PDX. The first hearing took place on a Monday morning at Multnomah County Courthouse, amid Portland's characteristic heavy rain. Heller was brought into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, wrists still marked from cuffs. He kept his head down, face expressionless. As Judge Evelyn Carr read the charges, the courtroom lights shone on him, casting a long shadow on the cold stone floor. "Norman Frederick Heller, you are charged with murder in the first degree, kidnapping, and intentional destruction of evidence to obstruct justice. Do you understand the charges against you?" Heller looked up slightly, voice hoarse. "Yes, Your Honor." His appointed defense attorney, Thomas Greer, immediately requested the court consider reducing the charge from murder in the first degree to manslaughter, implying an unintended act. He argued Heller had no history of violence and that the relationship between the suspect and victim may have led to an unintentional conflict. But Prosecutor Decker didn't let him go far. She stood, flipping the file. "We have DNA, shoe prints, physical evidence, and the defendant's own words. I didn't mean to. I just didn't know what to do with her. Someone unintentional doesn't drive 20 miles at night, bury a body, and cover it with lime to erase traces. This was deliberate murder." Keyboard clicks echoed as reporters recorded every word. Outside, hundreds gathered under umbrellas, holding signs reading, "Justice for Elena." A middle-aged woman broke down as Heller was escorted through the hallway. She was Margaret Brooks, Elena's mother, aged nearly 2 decades by wordless waiting. In the holding cell, Simmons stood watching through thick glass. She no longer saw the cold electrician, but a worn middle-aged man, head bowed, hands trembling slightly. What chilled her wasn't his weakness, but his lack of remorse. When his lawyer spoke privately, Heller only said curtly, "They won't prove intent. I didn't plan to kill her." That afternoon, the prosecution held an internal meeting to finalize their strategy. Decker led the team, Simmons, DNA expert Dr. Linda Moreno, and forensic technician Mark Henley. She began, "We need to prove 3 elements: intent, control, and concealment. Intent, a precise, lethal blow to the occipital region. Control, moving the body, driving out of the city, hiding it in an industrial tarp. Concealment, using lime, burning evidence, erasing traces at the steel bridge. Not just murder," Decker continued. "He tried to make her cease to exist." Simmons placed the photo of the EB engraved necklace, found in Heller's house, on the table. "We'll open with this detail. It's small, but enough to make the jury remember the victim was a real person. 2 weeks later, the grand jury formally approved 3 charges: murder in the first degree, intentional killing during kidnapping, kidnapping in the first degree, unlawful detention and confinement, tampering with evidence, destroying and hiding evidence. In March 2024, the Portland courtroom felt heavy with a dense atmosphere, every breath audible. From early morning, the third-floor hallway of Multnomah County Courthouse was packed with reporters, the victim's family, law students, and residents who'd followed Elena Brooks' case for years. Outside, a light rain fell, familiar to Portlanders, but today it seemed colder. State of Oregon versus Norman Frederick Heller. The words glowed red on the electronic board, like a scar. Inside, the 12-person jury was seated. In the front row, Margaret Brooks clutched a shawl, eyes fixed on the empty chair reserved for the lead investigator, Detective Laura Simmons. She'd once said, "I just want someone to stand for my daughter and say what she can't anymore." Judge Evelyn Carr entered, her gavel's sharp rap echoing. Court is in session. Prosecutor Miriam Decker rose first, her voice low and clear. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court, the jury, this case is a testament to the power of time and justice. 14 years ago, a young woman vanished in the rain. Today, we're here because science and humanity didn't give up." Decker pointed at Heller, sitting less than 3 meters away, face blank, hands clasped tightly on the wooden table. "The defendant may stay silent," she said, "but the evidence will not." Defense attorney Thomas Greer stood to respond, his voice even and cold. "No one witnessed a murder. No cameras, no direct witnesses, no first-hand accounts. Everything you'll hear relies on a chain of data that can be skewed or interpreted to suit the prosecution's narrative." He stepped before the jury, hands on the podium. "We're talking about murder in the first degree, implying intent, a plan. But you'll find no plan. This could be an accident, an incident spiraling out of control. Can anyone in this room prove Norman Heller intended to kill?" For a moment, the courtroom was silent. Then Decker slowly placed a photo on the table, the EB engraved necklace from Heller's house. "Mr. Greer is right. No one witnessed it, but the evidence did," she signaled. The door opened, and Detective Laura Simmons took the witness stand. She wore a white shirt, gray vest, her face calm but eyes sharp. She swore the oath and sat. "Detective Simmons," Decker began, "please outline the reinvestigation of the Elena Brooks case." Simmons' voice was steady, clear. The case reopened in February 2023. Original evidence included a blue nylon fiber, a torn parking ticket, and mud from the steel bridge scene. "I sent the fiber to AAM Forensic Labs in Texas using next-generation sequencing. Results identified male DNA, matching the Heller lineage in Multnomah County." She described tracing the family tree, narrowing suspects to one: Norman Heller, an electrician working near the steel bridge in 2009. Surveillance followed, collecting DNA from a discarded coffee cup, which matched the 2009 evidence 100%. Decker asked, "When you arrested Heller, how did he react?" Simmons glanced at the defendant, then back silent. "He only said one thing: 'She's still by the river.'" The jury stirred. Decker signaled a technician. The lights dimmed. A large screen lit up, a March 2023 interrogation video. Heller sat hunched in a small room, hands shaking, voice choked. "I didn't mean to. I just didn't know what to do with her." No one spoke. Only the tap of the clerk's pen and the rain outside sounded. When the video ended, Decker said softly, "Ladies and gentlemen, these aren't the words of an innocent man. These are the words of someone who knew exactly what he did." Greer objected, requesting the video be excluded for emotionally influencing the jury. Judge Carr shook her head. "The court upholds the recording's legality." Objection overruled. That afternoon, Simmons stayed as the court recessed. A reporter asked her in the hallway, "Do you believe the jury will convict?" She replied curtly, "I don't believe. I know." Meanwhile, in the courtroom, Heller sat alone, yellow light falling on his haggard face. Greer leaned down, whispering, "Want me to negotiate a plea? Last chance." Heller pursed his lips, voice barely a breath. No, I won't say more. As the session paused, Decker turned to Simmons. Tomorrow, she said, we'll show the 3D simulation. They'll see everything, every step he took, every print he left. Simmons nodded. She knew that after 14 years, Portland would finally hear the rain of 2009 again, not as an empty sound, but as evidence. On the 8th day of the trial, Friday, March 22, 2024, Portland rained again. Drops fell on the Multnomah County Courthouse's glass roof. A steady, cold rhythm, like a countdown to judgment. Inside, every seat was filled. No reporters jostled. A taut silence hung, the kind everyone understood. Today was the day of decision. Judge Evelyn Carr opened the session, her voice echoing with the rain. Prosecution may proceed. Prosecutor Miriam Decker stepped forward. Before her was a stack of documents. Behind a large screen covered with a black cloth. Today, she said, we'll hear the victim tell her story, through evidence, through traces, through what the killer couldn't erase. She signaled. A technician removed the cloth. White light flared, illuminating the first image, the Clackamas riverbank lot. A gray-brown patch, streaked with moss and lime. Text below, excavation site. February 2023. Decker spoke slowly, each word clear. This is where we found Elena Brooks. Under cold soil, her body was wrapped in an industrial tarp, covered with lime, laid parallel to the river. 3 meters away, we found her house key, bus pass, and a hair matching her DNA. Some in the gallery bowed their heads. Elena's mother gripped her son's hand, eyes brimming. The next image appeared. The EB engraved necklace on a white cloth in the lab. Then the map, hand-drawn by Heller, found in his Gresham desk drawer. On it, a red X marked the exact excavation site. We don't need to speculate, Decker continued. He pointed us there. Next, she held up a black notebook, Heller's technical log, seized from his workspace. Inside, a handwritten entry dated December 9, 2009. Project delayed. Heavy rain. Too much noise on the bridge tonight. Decker paused, then said softly, that was the night Elena vanished. Another entry, in shaky handwriting. I thought she'd wake up. I just needed to stop her from screaming. The courtroom was silent. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. Heller sat hunched, hands clenched. Greer touched his shoulder, signaling, don't react. But Heller didn't look up. Decker lowered her voice, addressing the jury. This is a confession without words. No one forced him to write. No one made him hide the body. He did it all to avoid detection, because he knew he'd killed. The prosecution called its final witness, Dr. Linda Moreno, DNA forensic expert. She detailed the genetic matching process. The odds of 2 unrelated people matching DNA at 17 loci are 1 in 1.3 trillion, she said. Scientifically, it can't be anyone but Norman Heller. Greer objected. No one saw the act of murder, and there's no direct evidence of intent to kill. Decker stepped forward, voice firm. We don't need to see the killer strike. The evidence speaks of precise skull blow, body burial, and efforts to erase traces. That's intent. That's deliberation. Judge Carr nodded. The court notes, that afternoon, the prosecution presented the 3D simulation. Lights dimmed, leaving only the screen. Heavy rain, the steel bridge, Elena's car stopping, a figure approaching from behind. A cold voiceover, impact point confirmed. Victim, incapacitated instantly. Transport initiated. When the simulation ended, no one spoke. Only Elena's mother's soft sob broke the silence. Decker returned to the podium, voice near a whisper. Elena Brooks wasn't just a name in a file. She was a person with a job, dreams, a family, and the man sitting there took it all. She turned to Heller. He's had 14 years to show remorse. He chose silence. The jury was sent to deliberate at 3:17 p.m. The door closed, leaving only waiting. Time seemed to stop. The rain outside became a silent clock. For 4 hours, no one left. Decker sat still, hands on the file. Simmons stared at the table, recalling the first night she reopened the case, when it was just a damp blue fiber. Mrs. Brooks sat quietly, gazing at the empty space where no one remained. At 7:22 p.m., the jury room door opened. The gallery stood. The jury's spokesperson, a gray-haired woman, voice trembling, read slowly. Norman Frederick Heller. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree, guilty of kidnapping in the first degree, and guilty of tampering with evidence, on all counts. A wave of sighs swept the room. Some wept. Margaret Brooks covered her face, shoulders shaking, sobs breaking the silence. Heller sat still. When the judge asked, "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" he only lowered his head. Voice hoarse, "No, Your Honor." Judge Carr declared, "Norman Frederick Heller, this court sentences you to life imprisonment without parole. You will spend the rest of your life in an Oregon State facility with no possibility of leniency. This sentence is final and effective immediately." The gavel struck 3 times, sharp cracks cutting through the room. In the front row, Elena's mother sobbed uncontrollably, shoulders trembling. Her son held her, while on the prosecution side, Decker bowed her head, eyes misty. A reporter hurriedly captured Heller being led away, head low, light flashing off his cuffed wrists. As the courtroom emptied, Simmons stood still for a long moment. She looked at the bench where Elena's name had echoed throughout the trial, then exhaled, as if finally releasing a burden. Outside, the rain grew louder, tapping the windows like Portland's familiar, mournful, cleansing song. She stepped out with Decker. They paused under the awning. The streets were soaked, sidewalks gleaming with red ambulance lights parked at the gate. Decker spoke first. "How's it feel?" Simmons gave a faint smile, watching raindrops fall past her coat. "Like walking through a storm, but I know there are more waiting." Decker nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "But at least today, someone came home." They parted at the steps. Simmons walked down Estopio 4th, shoes splashing in puddles. The city blurred in fog and cold, but a quiet, unfamiliar feeling stirred in her. Not joy, not sorrow, but the sense of a circle closing. At the corner, she looked up at the faded sign of the Portland Police Bureau, where it all began. In the archives, the file labeled Case 047PDX. Elena Brooks would be closed, with a final red stamp, Sayov dead. Simmons smiled faintly, letting the rain wet her hair. Somewhere in the wind and water, a voice seemed to call softly, light, clear, distant, "Thank you." Portland's rain lingered 2 days after the sentencing, as if the city needed to wash away the past's remnants. In the old Portland Police Bureau building, on the 3rd floor, cold case archives, fluorescent lights cast a glow over dusty metal cabinets. The air was cold and dry, smelling of old paper and rusted iron. Detective Laura Simmons stood alone in the room, before a thick file box labeled 09-5123, Elena Brooks. She placed nitrile gloves on the table, opening the lid. Inside was all that remained of 14 years of investigation, the first report signed by Detective Paul Whitman in 2009. The torn parking ticket, a photo of the Honda Civic by the steel bridge railing, and the blue nylon fiber, now in a sealed vial, marked with a red label. Each item told a story, a piece of time. Simmons reviewed each document. The first page still bore Whitman's pencil note. No leads, nothing but rain. She gave a bittersweet smile, grateful yet pained. Whitman had died 2 years earlier, missing the case's resolution that haunted his retirement. She thought if he were alive, he'd probably shrug, light a cigarette, and say, "Told you, rain doesn't hide everything." She took a pen, adding to the file's final page. Case reopened February 2023, closed March 2024. Solved by DNA genealogical tracing. All evidence verified. Justice served. As the ink dried, Simmons placed a red cold case seal on the file's cover. The stamp read, "Solved. Genetic genealogy." The sound of the seal closing echoed softly, but in the quiet room, It rang like the closing of a long chapter for the city. On the table's corner, the evidence box was sealed for the last time. The fiber, necklace, map, Heller's journal. She affixed a storage label. Evidence, K09, 5123. Resolved. Do not open without court order. 2 archive staff entered, quietly carrying the box to the hallway's final shelf. They placed it beside another, bearing an unsolved missing person case. The way the boxes sat side by side made Simmons shiver. One found, another still waiting. As they left, Simmons lingered, eyes tracing the cabinets, stretching to the room's end, where hundreds of files gathered dust. She knew each box held an unanswered question, a voice unheard. And she knew one day she'd open another to repeat this journey, from a tiny fiber to a verdict in the rain. She returned to her desk. On it was Elena Brooks' photo, sent by her mother after the trial. In it, Elena stood by a window, holding an interior design sketch, smiling brightly, light catching her cheek like a rare Portland sunbeam. Simmons placed the photo in a wooden frame, setting it beside her computer, reserved for closed cases. Beneath the frame, she wrote in silver ink, "For those who never stop believing." The rain outside murmured like the city's breath. Light reflected off the desk, through Elena's photo, making her eyes seem to glow. Simmons leaned back, exhaling slowly. In that moment, she was no longer an investigator, but a witness to justice, returning after being lost too long. The internal phone buzzed softly. Lieutenant Rayner's voice came through. "Laura, come down for a quick meeting. We've got a new file from Salem's Cold Case Division. Woman missing since 2012. She smiled faintly, replying, "On my way." Before leaving, Simmons glanced at the photo one last time. "Thank you for not giving up," she whispered. Then turned off the light. The room's final light flickered and died, leaving only a dim glow from the hallway through the door's crack. In the corner, the red solved genetic genealogy text on Elena's file stood out in the dark, like a mark of lipstick in a sea of gray files. 3 weeks after closing case 09, 5123, the Oregonian's front page headline read in bold, "Portland cold case solved after 14 years. Justice found in the rain." The article recounted the investigation's journey from the Honda Civic left by the steel bridge to the life sentence without parole, emphasizing, justice may come late, but it never strays. The story spread across America, appearing on CNN, The New York Times, Dateline NBC. Reports highlighted Elena Brooks, a young woman who became a symbol for victims of cases thought buried by time. One April morning, as the rain eased, Portland held a memorial by the Willamette River, at the embankment facing the steel bridge. In thin mist, hundreds stood silently, holding white flowers. A small stone plaque was erected, inscribed, "For Elena Brooks, and for all who are still waiting to be found." Her mother, Margaret Brooks, was invited to speak. Her voice trembled in the wind. 14 years ago, I thought my daughter vanished into the rain. Today, I know the rain didn't take her, it only hid her, until someone was patient enough to find her again. As she placed a white lily by the plaque, the Willamette's waves lapped the shore, like a gentle reply. In the back row, Detective Laura Simmons watched quietly. She didn't speak, standing among ordinary citizens. She thought of nights before her screen, watching DNA matches align, and the moment she stamped solved on the file. In her heart, Elena wasn't just a victim, she was the reason Simmons kept believing in justice that never sleeps. After the case, the Portland Police Department, in collaboration with the Oregon Attorney General's office, announced plans to reopen over 150 cold cases from the 1980s to 2015. They named the initiative Operation Rainlight, inspired by the Elena Brooks case. Portion of the budget was allocated to next-generation DNA labs, and young detectives began digging through old file boxes. If Elena's case could be solved after 14 years, the PD chief said at a press conference, no case is impossible. Several Oregon schools incorporated Elena's story into curricula on justice and forensic technology. Law and criminal investigation students viewed the case as a classic example of forensic persistence, scientific tenacity overcoming time's limits. At Oregon State University, a seminar titled "The Brooks Legacy" was held, where Simmons was invited to speak. She said briefly, "DNA isn't just technology, it's how the dead speak." On social media, the hashtag #JusticeForElena spread, not as a trend but as a reminder, those who vanish are never truly lost if someone keeps searching. As night fell, Portland rained again. Under the lights reflecting on the Willamette River, Elena's memorial plaque glistened, soaked. Simmons passed by, pausing for a few minutes. She placed a sprig of lavender at the plaque's base, the flower Elena once grew on her apartment balcony. She looked up at the steel bridge, where it all began, golden light glinting on wet steel. The rain fell steadily, slowly, but not cold. She smiled, whispering into the wind. Finally, Portland stopped staying silent, and in the murmur of the rain, people believed that justice, though late, always has its own voice. The story of Elena Brooks is not just a case closed after 14 years. It deeply reflects how America today confronts questions of trust, justice, and the power of persistence in the age of technology. In a country where tens of thousands go missing each year and countless cases are shelved, Elena's case shows that something as small as a blue nylon fiber or a forgotten DNA sample can become the key to unlocking justice if someone is determined enough to search. Detective Laura Simmons represents a generation of Americans who believe justice doesn't depend on time, but on people. Dedication, faith, and respect for truth, even when all seems too late. The key lesson lies in the intersection of humanity and technology. In a modern society like the United States, where data, DNA, and artificial intelligence are transforming every field, Elena's case reminds us that justice doesn't come from machines alone, but from the human will to use technology with compassion. Efforts like the Justice Renewal Program, or Oregon's reopening of 150 cold cases, prove that scientific progress matters only when guided by perseverance and ethics. Ultimately, the deepest message comes from the small bronze plaque by the steel bridge, vanished in rain, found in truth. In America today, where anyone can get lost in the rain of doubt, loss, or injustice, Elena Brooks' story urges us to keep believing in the power of truth, because though justice may arrive late, it always returns when someone refuses to give up. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the truth behind that Portland rain, where Elena Brooks was finally called by her name again. Please subscribe to our channel to not miss other stories where justice, though late, always returns.